Joe in Portland, thanks for waiting through that.
Hello.
Hi, Joe.
Appreciate.
Welcome to the Atheist Experience, maybe.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay. So, I've been watching archive back.
I'm sorry, Joe, but your phone seems to be breaking up. I don't know if you're on a cell phone with a bad connection or what.
Let me try. Hello? Can you hear me now?
You're kind of cutting in and out. Try again.
Okay. Testing.
Yeah, that's better.
That's better.
I've been watching your archive on YouTube back, and I got almost to 06 before I had to quit because I couldn't stand to hear Pascal's Rager or look at the trees anymore.
I love trees.
I love the trees, but
And
that's just
rainbows.
a stupid argument.
It's actually an argument that I understand. This whole thing about looking at the world around you, look at the trees, isn't it amazing the world we live in? And the answer is yes. But the implications that they have, that it's so amazing that I just can't imagine that there's a natural explanation for it. It just demonstrates a failure not only of imagination on their part, but a failure of education, which may not be their fault, because we do have naturalistic explanations for these things.
Right.
But even if we didn't, that doesn't mean you get to go running off to the supernatural.
Completely. I've got a question for clarification. You often say, Matt, that rather than faith, you say, what is it, a reasonable expectation based on past experience?
Yeah.
Why do you draw that conclusion as opposed to faith and trust?
You mean, why don't I just say trust instead of a reasonable expectation based on past experience?
Yeah, basically.
Because trust doesn't tell you that that's what you're doing. Because you could trust something without having a good reason, and I'm specifically advocating having a good reason to trust something.
Okay.
I mean, I could trust somebody for really, really bad reasons. That's what con artists are actually banking on.
Okay, I can see that. I wanted to say, both of you, I really appreciate what you've done. I really enjoy the show. I'm basically an agnostic theist, but I live my life as an atheist. And I've all conversation, and I've used your...
Well, if you're living life as an atheist, I'm wondering if that actually means more like living it closer to a humanist, because, I mean...
Oh, yes.
So, in that case, as an agnostic theist living life as a humanist, I'm sure that the God that you're not sure that exists, that you're kind of hedging your bets on, might be proud of you.
I said agnostic deist.
Oh, deist.
I don't believe in a personal God or any kind of intercessory deity or anything like that.
So
Okay.
why? So this is my. So I hate to do this to you, and you can feel free to duck. I don't get deists at all, because the God that they're advocating for is one that is utterly useless. It's a God that doesn't manifest in reality in any way. And so if there's something that doesn't manifest in reality, then its existence is indistinguishable from its non-existence. So I don't understand how anybody can have any sort of rational basis to conclude that there's some God that exists but doesn't give us any way to detect this.
That's why I said I live my life as an atheist, because I don't have a rational basis. It's based totally on personal experience. It's something that I want to feel, I want to understand, I want to believe. It's more based, what is the song that you guys played with Carl Sagan and Feynman? We're all connected.
Yeah, but we're not in any real sense. I mean, there's this metaphoric sense, and the fact that my actions are going to have consequences on other people. But this idea of some kind of cosmic consciousness that we all share is absurd.
No. More than Neil deGrasse Tyson, we're connected biochemically, we're connected atomically.
Yeah, but
connection.
I'm down with all that. Why? I don't know how that gets you to anything that would be called a God.
I don't. I mean, it's.
So
Okay,
if you're
I live my life as an atheist.
Well, you live your life as an atheist, except when somebody asks you what you are, and you say you're an agnostic deist.
Well, I don't. I only said that to you. In conversation in life, I'm always an atheist, because I don't have a belief in God. When in my own personal life. I like theism as a concept of that connection.
Except that deism doesn't have this concept of connection. Deism is specifically about a God that doesn't intervene in reality in any way. There's nothing about us all being connected or this, you know, new agey spiritual stuff that ties to deism. Deism is the idea that there's some God that got it all started and then pissed off to do nothing and never interact with anybody again. That's deism.
Okay. Okay, I grant you that. And
Okay.
I'll go with atheist from now on.
Cool. I win again.
I think you always win. I don't think that you've ever, lost.
No, that's not true.
I've seen a lot of your debates, and whatever facile points they do through tag or any of the other crap. I don't believe that. That's not gaining any points.
No, and that's not always true. And to be frank, I've said before, and it's true. I'm not overly bothered by how people label themselves. The reason I'm having the conversation with you is because you brought up this label, and I'm confused by it. So I'd like to understand why people use certain labels. And if you have a discussion and you come up with a different label, cool. But if you wanted to continue identifying as an agnostic deist for the rest of your life, cool. Well, maybe not cool, but I'm okay with it. Not that you are required to care what I think about what label you use.
Yeah, I think you're entitled to call yourself whatever you like. We're just trying to understand, what distinction you're making there, I guess.
I just labeled deism. I just labeled that consciousness as the collective of experience, the collective of connection. I don't like calling it a God, but yes, you're right. That definition of deism calls for the definition, the concept of a God, and I don't like that either. So
now do we want to dig in on this collective thing that you're advocating for?
Okay.
So you mentioned that you have this kind of as a personal experience and something you'd like. What is it that you're actually advocating for? I mean, if you're just, because you mentioned Neil deGrasse Tyson and that we're all chemicals and stuff like that, but I mean, as long as you're not adding anything more to it, I don't. What is it that you believe and why?
That's not something I can totally defend.
Okie doke.
I have personal experience. It's based on, like you said, some kind. I was a pagan for a long time, but we.
So what kind of personal experience? Because just saying I have personal experience, I mean, it doesn't. Everybody has personal experience. What was the personal experience? What is it? What do you think it's with? I mean, if you don't want to answer, I'm not trying to force you. I'm legitimately trying to understand this.
Okay. I mean, if you want to get down to the brass tacks of it, it was a psychedelic experience where I felt connected, and it enhanced my life. I feel like I'm a better person for that experience.
Okay.
For not disregarding humanity, not disregarding animals or the earth or the universe. I feel better for that connection that I feel. That's why I call it deism, because it's not something, and you're right, I don't like that label now, but it was a personal experience. It's not something, and like you said, it's all chemical. I realize that as a scientifically minded person.
So this thing about psychedelic experience.
Yeah.
So I've had psychedelic experiences.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, when I sober up, presume that what I experienced is tied to reality in any way. And when I hear from people who have these epiphanies about life and they want to point to these experiences, I'm always confused as to why you think your brain, under the influence of chemicals so that it is now functioning in a non-standard way, has clued you into something more true or more accurate or more real than when your brain is functioning normally.
That's why I said I can't defend my reason why, because I know that what you're saying is true.
Okay.
I like the, and it's the same as, a faith-based Christianity. I like the feeling of knowing, and like I said, Neil deGrasse Tyson put it, we're connected to each other biologically, to the earth chemically, and to the universe atomically. That is sort of my belief system. I I like that kind of connection. I like that's what I would call, you know, you also use the definition of spirituality. When I was a pagan, that was the definition we used of spirituality. It was not kind of any kind of cosmic deity or anything like that. It was that kind of connection that we believed in. That was the worship that we embodied. It wasn't magic or anything like that. I realize that's mostly paganism, what you come across, but it wasn't anything like that. We believed in that connection. And that was our mysticism, the terminology.
Yeah, I totally get that. I spent a lot of time with pagans because I grew up in the Unitarian Universalist Church. A lot of pagans there. And I've had experiences of feeling connected to other people and to humanity and to, you know, other living beings without psychedelics. You know, it's a brain state that doesn't even necessarily need psychedelics, but
absolutely.
But I know what you mean, and I think it's an emotional thing, and you know, I would just invite you to not to appreciate that experience and not feel like you have to call it a god or label it in a certain way to kind of fit in with maybe people with different belief systems that attribute things like that to God.
Well, one thing was, when people say spiritual, not religious, I realize you always say, what does spiritual mean?
Yes.
And that's what I believe. Most of the pagans I've hung out with, most of the spiritual people, that's what they're thinking of. That's what they're trying to express, that connectedness, not
except
any kind of dogma.
Except that most of the, and granted, I don't spend a ton of time with pagans. Probably John spent more time than I have. But most of the ones that I've interacted with, when they talk about that connectedness, they seem to be talking about something that they think is real and yet not real. So there's some truer foundational reality that they've tapped into with this connectedness, in a sense that's not just what you're talking about, of us all being chemicals and atoms, and it's not just the metaphorical, you know, if I wave my arm around, it's going to do, you know, things and affect other people here. They're talking about something else, and they use this language. And so when I ask people, what do you mean by spiritual? It's because the word spiritual and the words spiritual and spirituality, along with some others, have so many different usages that they're relatively meaningless. I'm fine, and I was talking about this earlier, I'm fine with the idea of like the human spirit in a poetic metaphorical sense, or even soul in a poetic artsy type sense. When, you know, this wounds me to my soul, I'm not in any way advocating that I have some sort of disembodied spirit living within me. It's poetry, and I'm okay with that. It's when it extends beyond poetry and the metaphoric to talk about what's real, or worse, what's super real. What is the ultimate reality that most of us aren't in tune with, but somehow the mystics and pagans and the religious have managed to tap into that. That's when I start having objections. And nobody can ever give a good explanation or a good reason for why they believe it. So at least you're not trying to.
No. Like I said, I couldn't justify that. And I've heard that argument of alternate brain state from you, and I agree with it. That's why I said I couldn't defend it.
Cool.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Joe.
Could you give me a no, you're done?
No, you're done. Thanks, Joe.
He's too nice to do that to you, though.
Yeah.
He asked you to do it.
He asked, you know, and if somebody asked me to spank him, sorry.